Hello and welcome to the Badger Politics Show. This week the Taylor Review of Modern Working Practices was released. It was a report commissioned by the government to try and solve the issues produced by new ways of working brought about by the new technology. The report especially focused on the gig economy, jobs such as Uber or delivery drivers where the work is short-lived and freelance as opposed to a permanently contracted job. On the one hand, companies said that this gave workers the freedom to work whenever they liked, while also making them a tidy profit. On the other hand, unions said that these gig economy jobs were just companies abusing the workforce by making sure they weren't classed as workers or employees, which would have given them rights such as sick and holiday pay. But which side is right? Is there even a correct answer? And what did the Taylor Review actually suggest? I plan to explain that and more in this short video. Currently, there are three categories of employment for employment protection purposes: employee, worker, and self-employed. The main difference between each is how many rights they have. For example, employees have many rights such as sick and holiday pay and, perhaps most importantly, the right not to be unfairly dismissed. The self-employed don't have these rights and workers are about halfway. Uber drivers and others who do gig economy work were originally treated by the companies who recruited them as self-employed. This meant they didn't have many rights such as holiday pay and the national minimum wage, essentially meaning Uber could make a lot more money. However, Uber would say that the flip side of this was that their drivers had a lot more freedom than employees, in particular the freedom to choose when to work or indeed whether to work at all. It's important to note here that even if Uber drivers were employees or workers, they could still have this choice. In this case, it's up to the company, not the law. Unions wanted gig economy workers to be employees, or at least workers, as this would give them more rights, while Uber wanted gig economy workers to remain defined as self-employed, so they'd have fewer rights and be cheaper. This was followed by a legal battle which resulted in Uber drivers being defined as workers. The Taylor report suggests that the three categories of employment should essentially remain. However, a few things with how we define whether someone should be a worker should be adjusted. First, the report suggests that we should stop insisting that workers provide a quote personal service. While this seems irrelevant at first, it does make sense. For example, John works at Uber as a driver. In John's contract it says that hypothetically his friend Dave could do the work for him, even though this would almost certainly not happen. This means that when the employment tribunal is deciding whether John is a worker, Uber can say that as the service doesn't necessarily have to be personal to John, as his friend Dave could have done it, John therefore doesn't qualify as a worker and so gets fewer rights. This was essentially a sneaky way of companies ensuring that people who worked for them couldn't qualify as workers. The report instead suggests that someone's worker status should be defined by how much control they have. If the company they do work for has lots of control over what they do, i.e. when they have to start working and how much they will have to work, then they will most likely be defined as worker or employee. This means that it will be easier for Uber drivers and other gig economy workers to gain worker status and have the rights that comes with it. But what will this mean for your average Uber, or other gig economy business for that matter, user? Well, for the time being, nothing. The report is merely advice. The government can take it, or it can just ignore it completely. If it did come into law, it may lead to prices going up, as the employers have to pay for holiday pay or minimum wage. However, businesses may find another way of making savings, or just accept a smaller profit. In my opinion, the report is a bit too lenient to businesses. The report means gig economy businesses can essentially continue as before, but may have to pay some holiday pay from time to time. As most large unions have said, this still means that working for these gig economy companies can be insecure and possibly exploitive, and that very little for these workers has actually changed. Most importantly, they can still be sacked at any time for little to no reason. However, some would say that working for these companies is a choice, and given the freedoms that Uber drivers can have, they have to accept the risk of low and insecure payment that comes with that. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. While this was an important part of the Taylor Review, there are many other things to be discussed, such as the utterly thrilling issues of 0 hours contracts and slight changes to the minimum wage. I've included the whole report in the description below in a brief summary for those of us who have things to do. This was the Badger Politics Show. I hope you enjoyed, or at the very least learnt something, and tune in next week for more.